Can you hear me okay? No microphone, fantastic. Okay, so I've come this afternoon to bring to you a magic pill. So I have a pill that I want every single one of you to take right now. This pill, it's magic. This pill can literally change your brain. It can make people like you more. It can improve your memory. It can help you focus. It can prevent certain cancers. It can treat chronic diseases. It can prevent things like diabetes. It can make you happier. It can make you live longer. Now, who would trust me with those big, bold claims? Who would come and take this pill off me right now? Stand up if you would. Who would believe in me enough? Oh. 3 of you, okay, well done. I'm not sure I would actually if somebody came along with all those big, bold claims and said, take this pill right now. I'd be like, a bit sceptical. So I'm pleased that 3 of you were up for it. But my name is Helen Garr. I'm a GP. I'm a medical director of one of the largest mental health and treatment services for healthcare staff in the world. We're called NHS Practitioner Health. And I'm a wellbeing specialist. I'm a former Public Health England clinical champion for physical activity. And I used to be a director of the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. So I'm here today to convince you to take that pill that I've just talked about. And that pill is physical activity. So this is some of my holiday pictures. Did somebody say nice? Yes. So we went to Sardinia last year. I'm always on the lookout for cheap flights. And we found some flights, October half term. They were like about 60 quid to Sardinia. We'd never been before, and it was one of the most beautiful places I have ever been. Has anyone been? Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Absolutely mind-blowing. So my daughter will kill me for putting this picture up of her jumping off. But why am I showing you these pictures? Well, Sardinia is one of the 5 blue zones in the world. Has anyone heard of them? Yeah, so 5 blue zones. There's a really great documentary on Netflix, actually, about the blue zones. So we know that people who live in the blue zones, and the other 4 are in California, Japan, Greece, and Costa Rica. And people who live in these so-called blue zones, they live the longest of anyone in the world. So they have the highest number of people who live to over 100. And not only do they have the highest number of what we call octogenarians in the world, they live happier and healthier lives. And how do they do this? Well, we know the reason this happens in these blue zones is the people who live there, they live with a sense of purpose. They socialise together, they have connections, they eat with their family, they eat outside, they drink alcohol in moderation and often red wine, and actually the Sardinian red wine's got the highest proportion of antioxidants in the world. But the other key thing they all do to live long, healthy and happy lives is they move as part of their lives. You will never find a Sardinian or a person in the blue zone going to the gym. They exercise and move as part of their everyday lives. What we found is that actually people who live long lives in the blue zones, they live at the top of hills and they go out and they walk up and down every day. So we're going to see what we can learn from people who live in the blue zones, and we're going to learn a bit more about this magic pill I've called physical activity. So I want you all now to think about somebody you know or yourselves who's taking medication for a condition at the moment. Okay, so bring to mind family member, might be a patient, might be a colleague, might be yourself, somebody who's taking regular medication. And I want you to tell me what condition they're taking that for. So I'm going to start you off. I'm going to give you somebody, well, all of my patients and people I know, antidepressants for depression. Anyone else? Give me a condition that somebody you know is taking a pill for. Hypertension. Fantastic. You got one. You look like you're thinking of one. Cholesterol. Perfect. I asked my husband, he was like, I don't know what pills people take. Anyone over here? Nerve pain. Pneumonia. Yep. Chest things. Fantastic. Diabetes. Yeah. Anyone else? Arthritis, fantastic. That is absolutely wonderful. So thinking about the the pills we are handing out for all these conditions and the common things we see, I want to show you something. So we know that across the world, 74% of deaths worldwide are due to 4 main chronic diseases. And I think you've all mentioned most of them already. So heart disease, so high cholesterol. Cancers, respiratory disease, and diabetes. They're the 4 main causes of death across the world. In England, 89% of deaths are due to chronic diseases. We also call them non-communicable diseases. You might have heard of that. That's diseases that are not infectious. 89% of deaths in the UK. And these are the things we're chucking the pills at every day. But guess what? I'm going to tell you something that literally blew my mind when I found this out. These diseases are largely preventable and avoidable. Yeah, and I'm going to say that again, that they're largely preventable and avoidable. So these 4 main conditions that we are dying from across the world, we know are largely preventable and avoidable. And that's hard evidence. That's not me just saying that to try and shock you. We know that for a fact. So I'm going to take you back, before we go into that a bit more, back to the 1950s. So back in the 1950s, there were 2 pathologists working in London. They were called Jerry Morris and Margaret Crawford. And they were doing post-mortems on people that had died in London. And they started to notice something a bit peculiar. They noticed they were doing lots of post-mortems on bus drivers who had died from heart disease. So high cholesterol leads to high blood pressure, leads to heart disease. They were like, something's going on here. So actually, they put a call out to all of the pathologists across the country and said, what are you seeing? And actually, they led to something called the London Transport Study. And what we found was, back in the 1950s, that if you were a London bus driver, you were twice as likely to die of a heart attack compared to a conductor, because the conductors were up and walking around all the time. And this was one of the first times we really started to take notice of the power of physical activity on our health. Now, when I gave you that startling statistic that these diseases are preventable and avoidable, and I said I'm not just making this up, the WHO has a whole target and programme to work on this. So the WHO identifies 4 most modifiable risk factors, the most important things that we know are contributing to these 4 main diseases. And they are smoking, as you might imagine, physical inactivity, which you might not have imagined, alcohol use, and unhealthy eating. Okay? And they say, actually, what we know is these 4 modifiable risk factors, and what we mean by modifiable risk factors, we mean that people can change their behaviour and it will make a difference. These 4 modifiable risk factors lead to what we call metabolic risk factors. So if we smoke, we drink, we're inactive, we have an unhealthy diet, that leads to high blood pressure, leads to high blood sugar, so type 2 diabetes, leads to us being overweight, and it leads to high unhealthy fats, high cholesterol in our system. So when we go back to these 4 modifiable risk factors, and actually the WHO set a target to cut deaths from these risk factors by 25% in the next, I think we've got 5 years left, we're going to talk today about just one, physical inactivity. And the reason we're just going to talk about this is, 1, because it really is the magic pill, but 2, physical activity is the one thing out of those 4 modifiable risk factors that makes a difference to all of those things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity. There's actually a 5th risk factor the WHO puts out, which is air pollution, just in case anyone's interested. So physical inactivity is responsible for 1 in 6 deaths. 1 in 6. And when we look at those 4 major conditions that we die from, physical inactivity alone is accountable for 40% of the risk of dying from those 4 things. So aside from smoking and being overweight and drinking alcohol, just being inactive contributes to 40% of the risk. And that's the same as smoking, 1 in 6 deaths. But we know we're getting better at how many people smoke, and you might be seeing this in your trust with your staff, yeah? People are smoking far less, but our population is becoming more and more inactive. Nearly a third of the population is inactive, so insufficiently active for health. They're really terrifying figures, aren't they? 1 in 6. Look around, 5 people in this room next to you. One of you is going to die from being physically inactive. How depressing is that? But we're going to change it starting right now, aren't we? So 1 person dies every 15 minutes of physical inactivity. Think of the patients you're seeing in your hospitals. So, I'm going to set you a little challenge, okay? So I'm going to give you some conditions. And if you think that physical inactivity reduces the risk of each condition I'm going to give you by at least 20%, I want you to stand up, okay? So I want you to think honestly and truthfully. So if you think being active reduces your risk of high blood pressure by at least 20%, I want you to stand up right now. Oh, well done. I know. You'll sit. That's fine. It's good. It's good if you're sitting. I want people to say what they think. Okay. Type 2 diabetes. Sit back down if you don't think it reduces your risk of type 2 diabetes by 20%. What about heart disease? Yeah, you're all still standing. Strokes. I love that you're all still standing. When I do this talk to doctors, nobody stands up. The doctors are all sitting. Depression. Yeah. This is good. You're up. This is what we want. Cardiovascular disease. Yeah. Cancer. This is the point where all the doctors sit down when I say cancer, so you're all catching on. Joint and back pain. So who was it? Somebody said arthritis, didn't they, at the back? Yeah, okay. Falls, frailty. Yeah, I love that you're all standing. Okay, you can sit back down. Well done. Oh, actually, I've got one more, but sit down because I'm going to get you to stand up again. The more you move up and down is better. Last one. All-cause mortality. And what that means is death from any cause. Stand back up then. You're doing such great things in your cells every time you sit and stand. Okay, you can sit back down, well done. I'm going to show you the actual evidence we have for each of those conditions. So, for high blood pressure, up to 50% reduction. Same for type 2 diabetes. Coronary heart disease, 30%. Stroke, 30%. Depression, 30%. And actually, we've got some studies that are showing much higher results. Cancer, up to 25%, and actually some studies showing much higher. So the studies in bowel cancer have shown up to 50% reduction in risk. Anyone know why that is? So I'll tell you a little bit later the science behind it, but on a really, really basic level, if you exercise, if you move more, your bowels work better. So anyone remember Paula Radcliffe when she ran that marathon, she had to go to the side. So essentially, the more you move, the more you poo. And if you're pooing regularly, there's less chance of the carcinogens in your poo to come into contact with the bowel wall. So it's simple as that. But there's more to it, I'll tell you about in a little while. So joint and back pain, 25% reduction. Falls and frailty, 21%. And actually, how often do you hear people with osteoarthritis or joint pain, I can't exercise, I've got to rest? Yeah, and people say it was wear and tear. Well, actually, we now know that what we say is wear and repair. So my husband's he's done his knee, and he's getting old, and he's like, oh, actually, I can't do any exercise now, I need to rest. It's the opposite. You need to get going, move more, and it repair those joints. And then up to 30% reduction in dying from any cause. Now, you are not going to get a medication that reduces your risk of any of those things, you or your staff, by that amount. We do not have a medication in existence that has that effect. Yet we're all taking those medications, aren't we, for high blood pressure and high cholesterol, as we should. Please don't stop. But we're not all out doing the prescription for exercise or telling our staff, or our staff are doing it, or our friends or our family. I know you are. So, anyone seen this poster? Who works in hospitals? Who's in secondary care? few of you. You might have seen this campaign, End PJ Paralysis. Anyone seen it? So we know that when people come into hospital, they sit in their pyjamas all day. They don't move. If you are in hospital and you're over 60, the research tells us you can lose up to 40% of your muscle mass in 3 weeks. 40%. How often do you hear staff saying, sit down, sit down? Yeah. So my grandma, she lived to be, one of my grandmas lived to be 95. Really active lady, went for a walk every day, never got in a car, got buses, walked everywhere. She was admitted to hospital with a UTI. And she was a little bit confused, but nothing abnormal. The staff called me, you need to come in. She's wandering. So what do you mean she's wandering? She keeps getting up from her chair, she keeps walking. So what do you mean she's going for a walk? No, she's wandering. You need to come and get her. And they wanted to sedate her to stop her getting up. But actually, this was a lady who was really used to getting up and walking around. And how often do you see this in your relatives in hospital and nursing homes? What happens in nursing homes? People just sit, don't they? Not so much. We're getting, people are really starting to change. But we know that if you keep active into old age, and actually the population stats tell us people become far less active as they get older, often because they think they have to be far less active. You're not allowed to do things as you get older, or you go to a nursing home and they sit you in a chair all day. But we know if people stay active, we reduce the risks of falls and frailty and increase independence. So one of my worst fears, I don't know about you guys, but one of my worst fears is when I get old, somebody's going to have to take me to the toilet. I really don't want anyone wiping my bum, right? And if I can do anything to prevent that, I will. So if you think about when you get on and off the toilet, this is the movement you do, yeah? It's like a squat. So a squat is probably the most powerful exercise we can do. It uses all the big muscle groups. But if you want to stay independent as you get older, that's one of the best things you can do. And as I said, we can reduce falls and frailty by up to 21% with physical activity. So actually there is a test we do. Does anyone work in geriatrics, healthcare of the elderly? No, nobody. Okay. There is a test we do. It's called the sit-stand test, and it helps us predict people's risk of falls and frailty. It's also a really good little activity to do because it gets us moving and it lets us see how fit we are. So I'm going to invite you to take part in the geriatrics sit-stand test. Okay. So this is a 30-second test. That what you do, you sit in your chair, and without using your arms, you can cross them across your chest if you want. You sit and stand from your chair as many times as you can in 30 seconds. And then we can look. I want you to count. You must count. We can predict your risk of falls and frailty as you get older. Okay? So I got my son and my husband to do it. So they're going to, on a video, they're going to do it at the same time. Don't do what my son does because he's all over the shop. So just sit and stand. So wait, everyone ready? If you're not able to do it, don't worry. But if you are, take part. So when you're ready, we are going to go. In 30 seconds. Make sure you count. Well done. I'm not doing it because I won't be able to speak at the end of it. Right, you've got 10 seconds left. You've done really well. Keep going, keep going. Right, we're on 5 seconds. See if you get a few more in. 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. Well done. Give yourself a clap. Okay, so get your number. So this is, actually, we haven't got data for under 60s, but hopefully none of you you're doing all right. So if you're age 60 to 64 and you are a woman and you did less than 12, that suggests you are at risk of falls. So did anyone get 15? Few of you. Anyone get higher than 15? Okay, 20? Wow. 22? Higher than 22? Higher than 23? Keep your hands up. Higher than 24? Higher than 25? Oh, wow. So 2 at the back. What did you two get? 28. And what did you get? 28. 28. Anyone beat 28? Wow, that's fantastic. So you're the winners. Well done. The best I've ever had was a renal registrar, got 32, but that was about 4 years ago. So if you've got less than 12 as a woman or 14 as a man, it's time to start thinking about what you might do. It's never too late. But actually, what I've got you to do there is to start to focus. So if you're ever giving a talk, get people to move, because what it does, it switches your brain on to focus and gets people's attention. Right, so if you just have a look at some of the conditions we talked about, and I'm going to give you some of the evidence. So heart disease. So physical activity reduces the risk of heart disease to an extent similar to giving up smoking. Now, it's really hard to give up smoking, really hard. It's far easier to add something in than to take something away, okay? And I really like this stat. This stat actually came from William Burr. I don't know if anyone's come across him. He's the guy who devised Walking for Health. He's a GP in Birmingham. He's got some really great e-learning modules on the BMJ Learning site, and that's free to access. Loads of really good free modules around exercise. So if a 50-year-old man goes from being inactive to active, he reduces his risk of dying from heart disease by the time he's 60 by 49%. That's amazing, isn't it? Like, oh yeah, you don't look 50. Wow, you do lots of exercise. You look, yeah. I love it. I love it. That's brilliant. You know, if that genuinely happens, I will go home a very happy woman. Well done. So hypertension, we think of high blood pressure. So I mentioned the reductions we get with physical activity are higher than any medication. So a common medication we use for high blood pressure is what we call ACE inhibitors. You might have heard of them, ramipril, lisinopril, they all end in pril. An ACE inhibitor will reduce your risk of death from cardiovascular disease in hypertension by about 19%. Okay, it's not bad. But you know, physical activity reduces it by up to 30%. So you get a much bigger reduction with physical activity than you do with any pill. And if you're active, your BP drops for the next 22 hours. So if you move your body every day, it's like taking a pill every single day. It's absolutely fantastic. There's a really good stat that I like. We know that if you're physically active to the guidelines, which I'll come on in just a moment, you will reduce your blood pressure on average by what we call 10 millimetres of mercury. So that top number is, so say that top number was 150, which might be a little bit high. You exercise to the guidelines, you'd reduce it to 140. That doesn't sound very much, does it? But actually, you only have to reduce it by 2 to have a 10% reduction in stroke risk. Mind-blowing, isn't it? I inspire myself to go for a run when I do this talk. So this is my dad. He's nearly 80. And we took him to Sardinia on a trip, and he's always active. He's always on the go, and I quite liked he had the guts to jump off that boat because I didn't. But my dad, he used to be a semi-professional footballer. And he played football right up to he was 60 years old. He was still playing in the first team in our village. But then he moved up north. He moved up to Berwick, where it's always cold and raining, a bit like whenever I come to Manchester. And he got a girlfriend, and he stopped going out as much, and he settled down, and the weather was rubbish, so he wasn't as active. And actually, before he knew it, he found himself diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And he was absolutely horrified at this. And his doctor offered him metformin medication. He said, Helen, what can I do? I said, you know what you can do, actually, Dad? If you start to be physically active, you can literally treat your type 2 diabetes with physical activity. So he got a treadmill, and he started going on the treadmill in his garage every day. And before he knew it, he was running 5K every day at nearly 80. And when he had his last test for diabetes, he had reversed his diabetes. He put it into remission simply through physical activity. Isn't that amazing? And he's so terrified of dying, so he will do anything he can to stay alive for as long as he can. So type 2 diabetes, you can reduce your risk of developing type 2 diabetes by up to 50%. So if any of you got type 2 diabetes in your family, that puts you at risk because we know it's genetic, you can reduce your risk. And people who get type 2 diabetes, it's not the diabetes that kills them. it's the associated heart disease that kills them. So your risk of cardiovascular disease and dying from cardiovascular disease is 2 to 4 times higher than somebody without diabetes. But do you know what? If you exercise, and I shouldn't say the word exercise, I should say move, because if you say exercise, what do people hear? They hear gym, they hear money, they hear lycra, they hear time. If you move more and you're physically active to the guidance, you can literally obliterate that risk of dying from cardiovascular disease back to baseline. So to the same risk as somebody without type 2 diabetes, if you're active to the guidelines. I just think this is bonkers. We should have this on the side of buses and everything. So you can reduce your HbA1c, that's your measure of blood glucose over the last 3 months. And if you've got pre-diabetes, you might have heard this term, pre-diabetes, the most powerful thing you can do to prevent progression to actual diabetes, physical activity. That's amazing. So all of these physical effects on these chronic diseases, but also brain-changing effects. We know that when you're physically active, your focus improves. We also know that your memory improves. So when we're active, something happens in our brain. It's called neurogenesis. We make new brain vessels. We lay down new pathways in our brain that improve memory. So there's lots of evidence starting to come out now that physical activity might prevent dementia. We certainly know it improves our cognitive focus. So, have you ever had this where you've got a difficult work situation or a problem and you're sat in front of your laptop, but then you go out for a walk, and suddenly it comes to you. So if I'm writing a talk, I go for a swim. Always. So we have these problem-solving meetings, don't we? We all sit around desks. Why are we walking on these meetings? So I try and have now as many meetings as I can walking. And even if I think I might have done it with, did I do it with you, Toby? I can't remember. Yeah. So if people ring me and want to have a meeting with me, I'll say, I'm going to walk. It'd be great if you could do that as well. And actually, I did a appraisal the other day with one of my staff members, and we both walked 6K. On the appraisal that we did. So also when we are active, our brains release a chemical called BDF, brain-derived nootropic factor, and that protects against stress. And that's why we feel happy when we have exercise. Isn't that fantastic? And then depression. So depression, for treating depression, physical activity is first line in the NICE guidance. So hard evidence. We know that even for severe depression, physical activity can be as effective as antidepressants. Isn't that amazing? So who was it I just met? I didn't catch your name, a lovely lady who works in the mental health hospital. Charlie. So how often do we see in our mental health trust patients, what do they do all day? Sit and isolate themselves. Yes. Yeah, or there might be a gym, but nobody can get them there because you need a staff member to take them and you haven't got enough staff members. Yet we know it's probably the most powerful thing we can do for mental health treatment. We know within 5 minutes of moving our bodies, we get positive, uplifting effects on our brain. So when we're active, these things happen on our brain. We release chemicals. We used to think it was all about serotonin, but actually we know now we release things called endocannabinoids. And when we release those, it makes us feel happier. And not just did it make us feel happy, it makes us more likeable. Isn't that mad? People like us more when we're active. That's bonkers, isn't it? It works on opioid receptors, which makes us feel happy, and it reduces this thing called systemic inflammation, which I'll tell you about in a little while. But I spend a lot of time talking to my patients saying, I know you don't feel like doing this. When we're feeling down, the last thing anyone wants to do is go out. But if we move our legs, our minds will follow. And sometimes you just have to get out there and do it. But have you ever done that thing where you've been to work, you're absolutely shattered, you come back, you just want to sit on the sofa, glass of wine, put your pyjamas on? Yeah, I do that every night. Anyone got that yet? And you're just so tired you can't do anything. But that one time you get yourself out and you might go for a walk, it might be a run, it might be a yoga, it might be Pilates, whatever, and you come back and you go, that was bloody brilliant. Why am I not doing that more often? Anyone done that? You never come back and go, oh, that was shit, I wish I hadn't bothered. Do you? So you never regret a workout because being physically active makes us feel better. It's a fact. That's why you hear your doctors all the time saying exercise, but we all just don't listen. So for cancer, there's 2 million cancer sufferers in the UK, but we know that most of them are not active enough to recommended levels. Why is that? So people get cancer, what do you hear all the time? You must rest. You must save your energy, yeah? But we know that lots and lots of evidence that for cancer, physical activity actually can help treat the cancer, it can improve the prognosis in certain cancers. We know it can prevent recurrence in certain cancers. So in breast cancer, it can prevent recurrence by up to 40%. We know it can really improve fatigue, it can improve treatment side effects, it reduces the risk of death, so it improves your prognosis. And for certain cancers, it can help prevent the development of certain cancers, so breast, colon, stomach, prostate in particular. So lots of the oncologists now are really embracing this power of physical activity. And in fact, a friend of mine and Toby's, a lady called Lucy Gossage, she's absolutely awesome. You need to get her in to come and talk. So she's developed something called 5K Your Way, and it's essentially parkrun for people with cancer. And it's now national, and it brings people together to connect and just make those lovely connections and to be active for people who are living with cancer. So the oncologists are really getting into this, what we call teachable moments. So when you're breaking bad news to somebody and telling somebody they've got cancer, that's a terrible thing to have to tell someone, isn't it? But we also know that is an example of what we call a teachable moment. So when somebody's hearing something like that, they're much more receptive to making changes. So if somebody's given that bad news, but one of the things you can do to help with your treatment, and one of the things you can do to help prevent reoccurrence is actually be physically active. People are much more receptive. My friend's just been diagnosed with stage 3 bowel cancer, and he's actually just set up a series of videos called Chemo versus Gym. And that rang so true to him when his oncologist talked to him about it. And now he's at the gym every day, he goes straight from chemo to the gym, and it's giving him a sense of control over his illness. But these teachable moments happen throughout our lives. So you're thinking about the teams that you're trying to influence at work. So when people start a new job, when doctors are rotating around, so these junctures in life, when somebody comes back after maternity leave, somebody gets pregnant, these are all what we call teachable moments when people are much more receptive to hearing the things you've got to offer them and want to persuade them to do. And then this is probably the biggest thing for me, is being physically active literally makes us live longer. So this is from a Public Health England campaign. You might have seen it. It's knocking around a few years ago. But move more, live longer. I say that all the time, and that is so true. If we literally move our bodies, we don't need to go to the gym, we just need to move more, we will live longer. And we know that just 10 minutes a day can add up to nearly 2 years on your life. Isn't that amazing? Yeah? We actually know, I was going to show you a really boring graph, but I took it out. But the evidence shows us that when we start to exercise, the people who do go from doing nothing to something, the graph is really steep. So it sort of goes like that. So it's the people who go from doing nothing to doing just a little bit have got the most to gain. So they're the people you want to be targeting in your wellbeing interventions. Anyone know what this is? Getting like a science lesson today. So this is a chromosome, okay? So this is a chromosome, and we all have pairs of chromosomes in our body that holds our DNA, which is our recipe for life. And these red bits on the end of the chromosomes, they're called telomeres. And they're like the rubbers on the end of pencils, yeah? And they keep all of our DNA safe. But as we get older, these telomeres, these rubbers on the end, they wear down. So people who are really old have got really short telomeres. People who look really old when they're not have got really short telomeres. So people who are more active, they protect their telomeres. So physical activity protects the length of the telomeres. So we know, we've done studies, 55-year-old runners had telomeres that were the same length as 25-year-old runners. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could all see how long our telomeres are now? But if you want to age well and live longer, you've got to protect your telomeres, and physical activity is one way of doing that. So I'm going to give you the science bit now, because I'm giving you all these mind-blowing stats, but you're probably thinking, how does it work? So When we are physically active, so I want you all to move now. You might want to just do a circle with your hands or something in the air. Just do something, just move your body. Well done. I like it. I love it. I love it. When we're physically active, what happens is we produce, you can stop now if you want, but you're welcome to keep going. So what you've just done there, you contracted your muscles, okay? And your muscles then released something called myokines. You don't need to worry about that word, but they're anti-inflammatory chemicals, okay? So they reduce inflammation. And we know that the underlying cause of these chronic diseases and cancers that I've been talking to you about, and depression, is something called systemic inflammation. So whole body inflammation, inflammation at a cellular level. And physical activity is a potent anti-inflammatory. There's also things that we eat that can do that as well, but physical activity is a potent anti-inflammatory. So you move your body, you contract your muscles, you release these anti-inflammatory chemicals, and that contributes to reducing the inflammation in your body, which reduces the risks of chronic diseases and cancers, which come from cellular damage from this inflammation. But there's another thing that happens. So when we're active, we reduce the nasty fat that sits around our organs. So we call this visceral fat. So if you've ever been to the doctors and they measure your waist, and we always think about waist circumference, that's because that is a measure of how much horrible fat you've got sitting around your organs and your tummy. And that fat sends out nasty toxins, and it's those toxins that contribute to systemic inflammation. And when we're physically active, visceral fat is the most responsive fat to movement. So even if the scales aren't going down, if we were to put people in an MRI scanner, we would see that fat's disappeared. That's why sometimes your clothes get looser, even when your weight hasn't changed. And when we get rid of that fat, which is a massive indicator for you having horrible things going wrong, we reduce systemic inflammation. So that's it on a really basic level, but it's quite interesting to understand what's going on when you move. So, in fact, I'm going to come off this. Does anybody know what the government guidelines are for physical activity? I don't expect anyone. When I do this with doctors don't know. Yep. Well done, well done. So it's what the guidelines say, and this is a really good infographic you can get off the government website if you want to stick it up in your areas, is 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity a week. Okay, so you don't have to do that in 30 minutes a day bouts, it's just 150 minutes a week. So moderate intensity activity means you're a little bit out of breath, your heart's beating a bit faster, you're a bit warm. We do something called the talk test, so you can have a conversation, but you can't sing a song. Okay, that's moderate intensity. But you can double your money if you do vigorous intensity. So vigorous intensity is where you can't speak. Probably some of you might have been off that sit-stand thing, yeah? So you only have to do 75 minutes of that. So double your money. Now, the forgotten bits of this are build strength on at least 2 days a week. So muscle, things that build your muscle, we forget that. So that can just be carrying your shopping, doing some arm weights. And that's particularly important for our children. So there's different guidelines for younger people. They have to actually do far more. But we know that you build 90% of your bone density by the age of 18 to 20. 90%, right? And the way you build your bone density is when you do muscle, things that are muscle resistance. So the tendons of your muscles they tug on the bone, and that tugging on the bone causes the cells in the bone called osteoblasts to build strong bone. So I'm constantly saying, my daughter's 16, you've got to go to the gym, you've got to go out and do some weights, you've got to go on those monkey bars, because now's your time to build your bone mass. And she goes, oh, shut up, Mum, I don't care. But it's actually, you've got quite a small window to build this. And then minimising time sitting. I'm going to come on to that in a second, and improve balance. And I think you did some Pilates, didn't you, already, which is a great thing for improving balance, and yoga. So minimising sitting time. Who sits for 3 hours a day at work? Loads of you. Okay. You reduce your life expectancy by 2 to 3 years by sitting for 3 hours a day. So we know, and some researchers have gone as far to say sitting is as bad for health as smoking. So there's such a thing as being an active couch potato. So you might sit all day at work. Oh, that's all right. I go to the gym after work. I go for a run. You can't undo what's happened with the sitting. It doesn't undo the damage from the sitting. That's quite scary, isn't it? But I'm going to teach you a skill. Get off your chair. So stand up. Simply by doing that, you've turned on your lipoprotein lipase enzyme. That's the enzyme in your cells that breaks down fat. That switches off after 20 minutes. You've just switched it on. So simply by breaking up your sitting time, improves your health. Does anyone have a standing desk? Hands up. Who's got one? Amazing, fantastic. Do you feel better with it? Yeah. So when I was a full-time GP, I used to have, you can sit back down if you want, actually. You did well. It's the sitting and standing, that's good. I had a chair with wheels on it, and that was my room, actually. And I used to wheel myself around my room all day long, and I used to wheel myself to the patient, wheel myself to the drawers. And then I used to go home 13, 14 hours later and wonder why I felt like an absolute slug and felt terrible. And it's because I was sitting all day. So I got a standing desk, cost me 60 quid off Amazon. I claimed the tax back. Everyone laughed at me. But now, 5 years later, pretty much all the staff in the surgery I worked have now got one. And it really does make a difference. You don't need a standing desk. You can put your laptop on a box. You can just think about changing. I have a rule now. If I'm in a meeting that doesn't involve me to type or bring anything up, if I'm in a listening and talking meeting, I either do it walking, but if it's confidential and I can't, I do it standing. And that's my rule. And I encourage my teams to do it. Yeah, and try and have meetings where we take the chairs out of the room. So our local PCN now has standing meetings. I've tried to get the MPs in Parliament to do the same, so they're trying to do more standing meetings. But it's really easy to make these small changes. So if exercise or physical activity, as I should say, is so good for us, why are so few of us doing it? We know 1/3 of us are not physically active enough for good health. Well, we know that adults are 20% less active than they were in the 60s. And if we keep going as we are, by 2030, we'll be 35% less active. And that's because we're the first generation who've had to make a choice to move. So this is one of my other grandma. She lived to 104, actually. She was amazing. And she was so active. She did a washing in a twin tub. She didn't get a proper washing machine till I was younger. Outside toilets she had to walk to. She wanted to book a holiday. She walked to the travel agents. She walked every day to the shop to get her shopping in. She was physically active, like the Sardinians, as part of her life. As she got older, when she got to 90, she heard this thing about preventing frailty by exercising more. She got an exercise bike and she went on every day for 20 minutes, right up until she was 101, then she did have to stop. So thinking about why so few of us are being active, our culture in the way our lives and systems are set up is one thing. Actually, how easy is it? If you think you go to a shopping centre or even in your workplace, it's often not that easy to be able to take the stairs, is it? To make good choices. You're often forced into going in the lift, or I took the stairs in the Royal College of GPs actually once, and I said, can I take the stairs? And they said, oh, I'm not sure about that. You have to go behind a barrier, and they got the security guard to let me in the door, and I went in, and then I got to the floor I needed to, and I couldn't get out because I didn't have the right badge, and I had to bang on the door, and it was the middle of the GP exam that everyone was sitting, and they had to and it was all a farce, and actually they made it so difficult. Yet when I worked in Public Health England, they had a sign on the lift saying, do you really want to take this lift? If you take the stairs next to it, you're going to burn this many calories. You're going to do this to your blood sugar. You're going to feel so much better. And just that little prompt made it more likely. And I need to not go over, but actually I didn't put in my slides. In some countries, the Scandinavian countries, they have like piano stairs. So if you walk up the stairs, you can play a tune. Anyone's seen it? Or if you do 5 minutes on a little bike or a treadmill, you get your train for free. You know, so all these things we could bring. I'd love to bring into workplaces, all those kind of things. So one of the reasons we often don't do as much physical activity as we would like is because of our own internal barriers. So we think we have to go to the gym. We think we have to exercise for 30 minutes. We think we have to go all out on a treadmill. One of the big reasons I hear from people is time. I don't know if that rings any bells. I don't have enough time. And the other thing is actually people get despondent when they're not losing weight. So a friend of mine, he said, I've been for a walk every morning. I've been getting up at 6 in the morning. I've walked every morning for 2 weeks. I haven't lost a pound. Well, actually, we know that using weight loss as a motivation for physical activity is going to set you up to fail, because it's very, very difficult to lose weight through physical activity. So if you imagine you run a marathon, what's that, 26 miles? How many calories do you think you'd burn off running 26 miles? It's about 100 calories per mile, so it's about 2,600, right? Not bad. Guess how many calories you have to burn off to lose 1 pound? Yes, well done. 3,500, so you won't even lose a pound by running a marathon. So if we focus on weight loss as our motivator to be physically active, we're going to fail. And actually, you'll find that lots of the people you're trying to persuade might have that idea in their minds. So I say all the time, actually, it's about well-being, health. Think about what your why is. We do know it's better to be fat and fit than thin and unfit, so I tell doctors a lot, don't just talk about physical activity to the thin people, because actually there's lots of fat people out there running marathons and the thin people are doing nothing. And there's such a thing as toffee, thin on the outside, fat on the inside, where you've got all that nasty fat around your organs. So think about what's your motivation. What's the motivation? Didn't anyone know who this is? Yeah, Mr. Motivator. I got bumped. I had a slot on Radio 1 a while ago, and I got bumped for him. They said, we've got another guest, sorry, we don't need you now. It was him. And then he stole everything I was going to say. So anyway, he's in my talk. So what's your motivation for being active? What's your team's motivation? So somebody tell me, what motivates you? I'm going to go to you.
Team's motivation would be maybe just getting some headspace off the walls.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Somebody tell me their own motivation to be active.
Pain-free.
Pain-free, I like. Yeah, I'm going to come to you. So if you were to do something, what would motivate you?
A bit like more energy.
Yes, fantastic. Do you want to give me one?
Aches and pains.
Aches and pains, I love this. I do it just to feel a bit happier, actually. You know, I feel better. So actually, how often do people think they have to go to the gym? So bring to mind if you've been, did anyone go to a gym or anyone ever been? Anyone ever been to a gym? Okay. Bring to mind those people on the treadmill. What do their faces look like? Any of those having fun? No, they look in pain, don't they? It's agony. You know, you never say, yay, this is great on the treadmill. Rarely happens. So your motivation needs to be not punishment, but something that's fun. And if we do something that we enjoy and we see movement as fun and enjoyable, we're more likely to do it. So I'm going to put this up. My husband will kill me, but every time I see it, it really makes me laugh. So me and my husband ran the Robin Hood half marathon a couple of years ago. And this was our finishing photo. So this was mine. I love running these marathons. I stop at every mile, I take selfies, I dance with the band, I'm high-fiving all the kids. Just love it. I'm really slow. Takes me hours and hours, but I absolutely love it. My husband goes in, I've got to get a good time, I've got it, and he just goes in, he slogs it, he hates every second of it, every second. This was his finish. Every time I look at it, it just makes me howl. So, one of us was having far more fun than the other doing that. So this is what my husband normally looks like. So these are some of the things we've done as a family. Now I want you to think about things you've done that you might not have realised. We're being physically active, so we did this slip and slide, we play netball, we go open water swimming, we did this trampoline thing, did go ape, we did skydiving, I just little walks in the countryside. No, even the dog's smiling when we go out. So you are probably doing things like that in your life that has brought you great pleasure that you've not realised actually it's physical activity. And when we start to identify what those things are that bring us pleasure, that's what we need to do. We don't need to go to the gym if we don't enjoy it. We don't need to do half an hour of exercise every day if we don't enjoy it. We need to move our bodies more. So who's got kids? Anyone got kids? Yeah. So next time your kids come up to you, throw them up in the air, have a dance. Next time you see a band, just dance to the band, Kids are always jumping, aren't they? My kids jump everywhere. We don't jump, do we? We just walk, we sit, play in the park. So just move your body. And that's the message I want to get across for you and your teams. So how long? I've got 6 minutes left. So things that I want to give you to motivate you and your teams, because people often ask me. Diary anchor. Put something in your diary. Every Thursday I do yoga. Every Friday I go for a 5-minute walk. So anchor something into your diary. Habit stacking. Anyone heard of this? Yeah, fantastic. I love this. So we have really strong neural connections in our brains for the things we do regularly. So like cleaning our teeth, putting the kettle on, they're hardwired. So if we add on to those hardwired habits, we stack on, we're more likely to do things. So if, for example, every time I boil the kettle, this is what I do 10 squats every time. One of my friends, every time he sees a patient, he does 10 star jumps. He does 20 if it was a particularly bad patient. I've got my son, every time he cleans his teeth, he does a little dance, whatever. But habit stacking onto things you do regularly. Reframing physical activity as self-care or a prescription for health. So I say to my patients, this is your pill. Go out for that, whatever it is you enjoy, whether it be a walk, a dance, whatever. You see that as your pill that you're taking every day. You see this as self-care, not punishment in the gym. Make it easier for yourself. So I was saying to one of my team members, one of our psychiatrists, do you know what? I used to run all the time. I've fallen off the wagon with running. I don't go for a run. She's like, why not? I said, you know why? Because I just can't be arsed with putting that sports bra on. It takes me 10 minutes to get that. So anyone know what I'm talking about? It's such an effort, isn't it? She says, well, buy one that fastens at the front. I was like, oh. Didn't think about that. And then she says, you know what? Where's your gym kit? It's like, oh, it's in the bottom drawer of my room. Put it in the top drawer. How simple is that? Make it easy for yourself. Put your trainers by the back door. And then if it really comes down to it, we say this a lot in my organisation, JDI, just do it. Move your legs, your brain will follow. Right. Has anyone been to any of my talks before? No, you have. Anyone else? Okay, good. So I've had this slide in my last talk. So this is a picture of my family. We went to Florida on holiday. And I took this picture because I thought, this is great. This illustrates everything I want to say in my talks. So this was the entrance to Universal Studio. And at the bottom of those stairs, every single person had a choice to make. We face choices like this, all of us, every day. You've probably faced about 5 or 6, 7 already today. On the left are my family, who wouldn't dare not take the stairs, and on the right is everyone else who made that choice. So we are faced with these choices all the time. So making active choices makes a difference. And we know there's such a thing now called exercise snacking. You might have heard of this. That just 1 minute of physical activity makes a difference. And we know it all adds up. You don't have to go to the gym for 30 minutes. You don't have to go for a 5-mile run. Just doing 1 minute when the life allows, walking here from the train station. Somebody might want to walk around as I'm doing this talk, throwing your kid up in the air, whatever it is. These minutes all add up. So exercise snacking, lots and lots of research for this now. Has anyone come across it? Because I think it's a game changer. Somebody I interviewed recently, I said, what do you do to stay well? That question we always ask, how do you stay well? She says, every hour I set my alarm, and every hour I do 3 minutes. At 57 minutes to the hour, I do 3 minutes of movement. And I do that every hour, all day. And those 3 minutes all add up. Isn't that wrong? That's amazing, isn't it? So she does 10-hour days and gets 30 minutes. So coming to the end of our talk, we are going to do some exercise snacking. So I want you to think right now of where you sit on a scale of 0 to 10 with your energy levels, your focus, how engaged you're feeling, okay? Don't tell anyone, but 0's not a talk. Can you just shut up? I need to get out of here. 10 is, this is amazing, best talk I've ever been to. When you've got your number, I want you to stand up. Fantastic. Right, so now we are going to do 60 seconds of exercise snacking, okay? Now, you might feel silly when you do this, but we're taking part in a little bit of research. So even if you feel silly, just go with it, okay? Just so we can see if this experiment works, okay? So when you're ready, if you're able, you're going to follow me, okay? If you feel silly, please just humour me, right? I'm going to walk on the spot. If you want to dance, that's even better. Right, are we ready? We're going to punch. Well done. I love this. It's my favourite song. And up. And down. Well done. Now we're going to do some circles. Forwards and backwards. Oh, I love it. Well done. Right. Now we're going to do squats. Remember I said they're really good for us if you're able. See how low can you go? Well done. Right, last 10 seconds. We're going to do some skipping, okay? Let me see what you can do. Right, let's see what tricks you've got. Last 3 seconds, fast as you can. Go, 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 go. And you can stop. Well done. Well done. Give yourself a round of applause. Well done. Okay. Anyone's heart beating a bit faster? Anyone a bit warmer? Yeah. Did anyone's number go down? No, fantastic. So that shows what a difference 60 seconds can make, yeah, to how we feel. And we can do those 60 seconds. Who hasn't got 60 seconds? Yeah, we've all got 60 seconds. So, right, Toby said I could go to 2 minutes past, so I'm going to give you my last couple of slides. I'm going to end with a little story. So this is one of my patients called Michelle. It's not really Michelle, because you can see I've stolen it off the internet. But Michelle was a patient who came to see me feeling tired all the time. That's a really, really common presentation we see in general practice. I don't think there's any of us that don't feel tired a lot. And she came in and she said, "Oh, Dr. Garr, you have to do something. I'm just tired all the time. I can't keep up with the kids. I'm really fed up. I'm really miserable. My marriage is going down the pan. Me and my husband never have sex and never see him. He goes out to the pub every night. I have to do everything in the house. Just had enough. I come back from school with the kids and just want to sit in the corner and drink wine, and they're screaming and I just can't. You have to do something." Really common presentation. So actually we did all the bloods. Everything was fine as I expected. And it can be quite difficult as a doctor to know what to do with this. So when I'm in these kind of situations, we're talking about lifestyle. If you say to a patient, change your lifestyle, in one ear out the other, no one's interested. But what I always have in my toolkit is this physical activity. So I wanted to talk to Michelle about physical activity, and I have 4 favourite questions that I use, and I'm going to share them with you. You might want to use them on your teams, you might want to use them on your husbands, your kids, it works for anything. And my 4 favourite motivational questions are, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you in wanting to make this change? So for Michelle, it was being more active. Might be washing the car for my husband or my kids to tidy their bedroom. And then we ask, why is that number and not 1? So Michelle said, well, you know, I'm about a 5. So why are you a 5 and not a 1? Well, because I want to be able to keep up with my kids. I'm fed up of feeling like this. I want to feel better in my clothes. I feel miserable. I just feel rubbish all the time. And you've told me that if I try this, I might feel a little bit better. Why is that number not a 10? Well, I'm not a 10 because I haven't got time to go to the gym. I couldn't put Lycra on. I can't afford it. I've got the kids all the time. Well, actually, you don't need to go to the gym to do this. You just need to move your body. Things you could do, like playing with the kids in the park, you know, going for a walk with the kids, whatever. So what would help you to move from where you are now to higher? And do you know what Michelle did? She went out to B&M Bargains, and she bought some, you know, those flashing disco lights you can get. It cost her $4.99. And she said, you know what she did? Every night when she got home from school, instead of wanting to hide in the corner and drink wine and shut the kids out, they shut all the curtains, they plugged in the flashing disco lights, and they had a little disco for 60 seconds. Do you do that?
So I have, my eldest is 3, and we have a disco.
Amazing.
We ask Alexa to play D-I-S-C-O, and we dance.
I love that. Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So she did that. She just did 60 seconds. But then she said, we enjoyed the one song so much, we started doing another song. I was like, you make sure you do wham, because we've always got to have a bit of wham. And she came back to see me. She said, we've been doing this. And you know what? I actually do feel a little bit better. I'm actually smiling with my kids. I feel a bit more energy. I can cope with the time after school now. What else can I do? So, well, you know what else you could do? And I told her about Parkrun and Couch to 5K because she was interested in that. And she started doing Couch to 5K. Then she joined Parkrun. Then she came back to see me. She said, you know what? I feel even better now. I've got all this energy. I didn't know I could run. I never thought somebody like me could run. And I do. And I've picked Sarah Milliken on my Couch to 5K. Just my husband's spending a bit more time with me. We even had sex. He stopped going to the pub. He's helping a bit more. Things are all a lot better. What can I do? So she joined a thing called Knott's Mummy Runners, where I live, and she joined this, she made new friends, she had this whole new lease of life, and she actually ran the Robin Hood half marathon. And it was one of my biggest successes ever, all on the back of physical activity in those 4 questions. So, if I take you back to the beginning, and this magic pill that I've brought in, I think 3 of you stood up. So I've got this magic pill now, and knowing what you know now, I've now got this pill that will help improve your memory, improve your focus, change your brain, help you lay down new neural connections, make new blood vessels, improve your memory and focus, make you feel happier, prevent chronic diseases and cancers. If you're suffering with cancer, can help treat the cancer and the symptoms, will even help you live longer. Stand up if you want to take that pill now. Well done. So movement really is medicine. Thank you very much.